His presence daily.
The 28th of January 1900, Volume 3. What Mortification Does. It still continues the same way. This morning, he transported me outside of myself. After a long time, I seemed to see Jesus with clarity, but I saw myself as so bad that I did not dare to utter a single word. We looked at each other, but in silence. Through those mutual gazes, I understood that my good Jesus was filled with bitternesses, but I did not dare to say, pour them into me. He himself drew near me and began to pour them, but unable to contain them. As I received them, I threw them to the ground. He said to me, "What are you doing? You do not want to share in my bitternesses anymore? You no longer want to give me relief in my pains?" And I, "Lord, this is not my will. I myself don't know what has happened to me. I feel so full that I don't know where to contain them. Only a prodigy of yours can enlarge my interior so that I may receive your bitternesses." Then Jesus marked me with a large sign of the cross, and he poured again, so it seemed I was able to contain them. And then he added, "My daughter, mortification is like fire, which dries up all humours. In the same way, mortification dries up all the bad humours which are present in the soul, and it inundates her with a sanctifying humour, in such a way as to make the most beautiful virtues sprout." End of the reading. The 28th of January 1905, Volume 6. The Cross is Seed of Virtue. As I was feeling in suffering more than usual, my adorable Jesus came for just a little and told me, "My daughter, the cross is seed of virtue, and just as one who sows harvests for men, 20, 30, and even 100, in the same way, the cross, being seed, multiplies virtues and perfections, and it embellishes them in an admirable way. So the more crosses thicken around you, the more seeds of virtue are sown into your soul. Therefore, instead of afflicting yourself when a new cross comes to you, you should rejoice, thinking that you are acquiring another seed with which you can enrich and even complete your crown." End of the reading. The 28th of January 1909, Volume 8. What Victim Means. Having read a book that talked about the different ways of operating interiorly and about how Jesus would compensate these souls with a great capital of grace and with superabundant love, I compared everything I had read to the many ways and the many different acts that Jesus had taught me in my interior, which compared to those of the book seemed to me to be so vast as the sea compared to a little river. And I said to myself, if this is true, who knows how much grace my always lovable Jesus pours in me, and how much love he has for me. Then, as I found myself in my usual state, well, Jesus came for just a little and told me, "My daughter, you do not yet know well what it means to be chosen as victim. Just as I, by being victim, enclosed in me all the acts of creatures, their satisfactions, reparations, adorations, and thanksgivings, in such a way that I did for all and for each one that which they were supposed to do. In the same way, since you were victim, it is useless to compare yourself to others, because you must enclose within you not the way of one, but the variety of the ways of each one. And since I must have you make up for all and for each one, as a consequence, I must give you not the grace that I give to one alone, but as much grace as to equal what I give to the whole of creatures. Therefore, love too must surpass all the love I have for the whole of creatures. because grace and love always go together. They have one single step, one single measure, one single will. Love draws grace, grace draws love. They are inseparable. This is why you see the most extensive sea which I've placed in you, and the little rivers in others. I remained astounded, comparing so much grace to so much ingratitude and badness of mine. End of the reading. The 28th of January 1911, Volume 10. Love forces God to tear the veils of faith. The church is agonizing but will not die. As I was in my usual state, the heart of my sweet Jesus made itself seen. And as I looked inside of Jesus, I could see his heart in him. And in looking inside of myself, I could see his most holy heart also within me. Oh, how much gentleness, how many delights, how many harmonies could be felt in that heart. Then while I was delighting with Jesus, I heard his most gentle voice coming out from his heart, telling me, "Daughter, delight of my heart, love wants its outpourings, otherwise one could not go on, especially one who really loves me and does not admit within herself any other pleasure, any other taste, any other life but love. I feel so drawn toward them that love itself forces me to tear the veils of faith, and I reveal myself, making them enjoy down here also paradise at intervals. Love gives me no time to wait for death with those who really love me, but I anticipate it also in this life. Enjoy, feel my delights, see how many contentments there are in my heart. Take part in everything. Pour yourself out in my love, so that yours may expand more and you may love me more." While he was saying this, I saw some priests, and Jesus continued, "My daughter, the church in these times is agonizing, but will not die. On the contrary, she will rise again more beautiful. The good priests strive for a life more strict, more sacrificed, more pure. The bad priests strive for a life more interested, more comfortable, more sensual, all earthly. I speak, but not to them. I speak to the few good ones, be they even one per town. To these do I speak, and I command, I beg, I supplicate, that they make these houses of reunion, saving for me the priests who will come into these shelters by rendering them completely free from any bond of family. And through these few good ones will my church recover from her agony. These are my support, my pillars, the continuation of the life of the church. I do not speak to the others, that is, to those who do not feel like freeing themselves of any bond of family, because if I speak, I'm certainly not listened to. Even more, at the mere thought of breaking every bond, they become indignant. Unfortunately, they are accustomed to drinking the cup of interest and the like, which, while being sweetness for the flesh, is poison for the soul. These will end up drinking the sewer of the world. I want to save them at any cost, but I am not listened to. Therefore I speak, but for them it is as if I were not speaking." End of the reading. The 28th of January 1916, Volume 11. Pains and fears of Louisa, but the greatest pain of Jesus is his constrained love. I felt oppressed. I thought to myself, everything is over. State of victim, suffering, Jesus, everything. I add that my confessor was not well, therefore I probably would have to do without communion. I felt all the weight of the suspension of my state of victim by Jesus. I had received no order from the guide, neither in favour nor against it. I added to this also my affliction, as I remembered that on March of last year, when my confessor was not well, and finding myself in the same conditions, Jesus had told me that if I, or the one who guides me, had kept me in the state of victim, he would have saved Karato. Therefore, new fears that I might also be the cause of some great trouble in Karato. But who can say all my apprehensions and bitternesses? They were so many that I felt petrified. Now, my blessed Jesus, having compassion, made himself seen in my interior. It seemed that he had his hand on his forehead, all afflicted, so much so that I didn't have the courage to call him. Almost whispering, I just said, Jesus, Jesus. He looked at me, but oh, how sad his gaze was. He told me, my daughter, how much I suffer. If you knew the pains of the one who loves you, you would do nothing other than cry. I suffer also for you, because not coming very often, my love is constrained and I cannot pull myself out. And in seeing that you too cannot pull yourself out because you do not see me, in seeing you suffering, I suffer even more. Ah, my daughter, constrained love is the greatest bitterness, which tortures a poor heart the most. If you remain quiet while suffering, I don't suffer so much, but if you trouble yourself and worry in your suffering, I fidget and become delirious, and I'm forced to come to pour myself out and to let you pour yourself out, since my pains and yours are sisters. Furthermore, your state of victim is not over. My works are eternal, and I do not suspend them without a just reason. I do not let them end. Moreover, I look at things in the will. So you are just as you used to be, because your will has not changed. And if you don't have sufferings, you are not the one who is harmed. Rather, creatures do not receive the effects of your pains, that is, to be spared from chastisements. It happens as to the creatures who occupy public offices or government roles for a given time. When they retire, they receive a life salary, even if they no longer occupy those places. Should I be outdone by the creatures? Ah, no. If rulers and administrators give a life pension, I give them for eternity. Therefore, you must not be concerned for the pauses I make. And then why do you fear? Did you forget how much I have loved you? The one who guides you will be prudent in your regard, knowing how things are, and knowing that they are in my will, and I will have a regard for Karato. As far as you are concerned, whatever might happen, I will hold you tightly in my arms. End of the reading. The 28th of January, 1922, Volume 13. How Jesus opened for us many founts in his will. I was praying, and my sweet Jesus drew me to himself, and transforming me completely into himself, told me, my daughter, let us pray together, so as to hold heaven in our power, and to prevent the earth from falling even more into the current of evil. So we prayed together, and then he added, while on earth my humanity saw itself as very narrow before the divinity, and since it was inseparable from the divinity, I did nothing but enter into the immensity of the eternal will and open many founts for the good of creatures. In fact, since they were being opened by a man God, I could give the human family the right to approach these founts and to take whatever they wanted. Therefore, I formed the fount of love, that of prayer, the other of reparation, the fount of forgiveness, that of my blood, another of glory. Now, do you want to know who shakes these founts so as to make them rise and overflow in such a way that all the earth may be inundated? The soul who enters into my will. As she enters, if she wants to love, she approaches the fount of love, and by loving, or even by placing the intention to love, she shakes the fount. Being shaken, the waters grow, overflow, and flood the whole earth. And sometimes this shaking is so intense that the waves rise up so high as to touch heaven and flood the celestial fatherland. If she wants to pray, repair, impetrate forgiveness for sinners, or give me glory, she shakes the founts of prayer, of reparation, of forgiveness, and they rise, overflow, and flood everyone. How many goods did my humanity not impetrate for man? I left the doors open so that they may enter with all ease, but how few are those who enter. End of the reading. The 28th of January, 1926, volume 18. After sin, Adam did the same acts as before, but because he had withdrawn from the supreme will, they were empty of the substance of divine life. The humanity of Jesus, the tree of life, which will produce the fruit of the fiat voluntas tua on earth as it is in heaven. I was thinking about the holy divine volition, and I thought to myself, how can it be that Adam, after sin, having broken his will from that of God, lost strength, dominion, and his acts were not so pleasing to God as to form his delight? Indeed, before sinning, Adam had done his acts toward God, he had learned them. Why then, in repeating them afterwards, they no longer sounded the same sound. They no longer contained the fullness of divine love and the complete glory of God. Now, while I was thinking of this, my lovable Jesus moved in my interior, and through a light that he sent me, told me, my daughter, first of all, before he withdrew from my will, Adam was my son. He contained my will as centre of his life and of all his acts. Therefore he possessed a strength, a dominion, an attractiveness, which was all divine. His breath, his heartbeat, his acts gave of divine. All of his being gave off a celestial fragrance, which drew us all toward him. So we felt wounded from all sides by this son. If he breathed, if he spoke, if he did even the most innocent, indifferent, and natural things, those were wounds of love for us. And we, amusing ourselves with him, filled him more and more with our goods, because everything he did came from one single point, which was our will. Therefore, we liked him all. We found nothing which might displease us. Now, after sin, Adam descended from the state of son and reduced himself to the state of servant. And as soon as he broke up with the supreme will, the divine strength, the dominion, the attractiveness, the celestial fragrance went out of him. Therefore his acts, his being, no longer gave of divine, but were filled with a human sensation, which, making him lose attractiveness, caused that we no longer felt wounded, but rather we kept our distance, he from us and we from him. His repeating the same acts as those he did before sinning, as in fact he did, says nothing. But do you know what the acts of the creature are without the fullness of our will? They are like those foods without condiments and without substance, which instead of being enjoyed, disgust the human palate. And so do they disgust the divine palate. They are like those unripe fruits, which contain neither sweetness nor taste. They are like those flowers without fragrance. They are like those vases which are full, yes, but of old, fragile and ragged things. All this can serve a strict necessity of man and may be a shadow, a shade of the glory of God, but not the happiness and the complete well-being of the creature and the fullness of the glory of God. Now, on the other hand, with what pleasure does one not eat a food which is well-flavoured and nourishing? How it strengthens the whole person. The mere smell of its condiment whets one's appetite and the eagerness to eat it. In the same way, before sinning, Adam flavoured all of his acts with the substance of our will, and therefore he whetted the appetite of our love. to take all his acts as the most enjoyable food for us, and we, in return, gave him our delicious food, our will. But after sin, poor one, he lost the direct way of communication with his Creator. Pure love was no longer reigning in him. Love was divided by apprehension, by fear, and since he no longer contained the absolute dominion of the supreme will, his acts of before, done after sin, no longer had the same value. More so, since the whole creation, including man, came out of the eternal Creator as their source of life, in which they were to be preserved only with the life of the divine will. Everything was to be founded upon it, and this foundation of the divine will was to preserve all things as beautiful and noble, just as they had come out of God. And in fact, all created things are just as they were created. None of them has lost anything of its origin. Only man lost the life, the foundation, and therefore he lost his nobility, the strength, and the likeness to his Creator. But in spite of this, my will did not leave man completely, unable to still be his source of life and the foundation that would sustain him, because he himself had withdrawn from it. It offered itself as medicine so that he might not perish completely. So my will is medicine, is sanity, is preservation, is food, is life, is fullness of the highest sanctity. In whatever way the creature wants it, so does it offer itself. If she wants it as medicine, it offers itself in order to take away from her the fever of passions, the weaknesses of impatience, the vertigo of pride, the sickliness of attachments, and so with all the rest of evils. If she wants it as sanity, it offers itself to preserve her healthy, to free her from any spiritual illness. If she wants it as food, it gives itself as food to make her strength develop and grow more in sanctity. If she wants it as life and as fullness of sanctity, then my will makes feast, because it sees man returning into the womb of his origin from which he came. And it offers itself to give him the likeness of his Creator, the only purpose of his creation. My will never leaves man. If it left him, he would resolve into nothing. And if man does not give himself to letting my will make him a saint, my will uses the ways to at least save him. On hearing this, I said to myself, Jesus, my love, if you love so much that your will operate in the creature, as in the act in which you created her, as if there had been no fracture between your will and that of the creature, why, in coming upon earth to redeem us, did you not give us this great good, that your will, triumphant of everything, would place us in the order of creation, just as we came out of the hands of our celestial Father? And Jesus, coming out from my interior, pressed me all to his heart and with unspeakable tenderness told me, my daughter, the primary purpose of my coming upon earth was indeed this one, that man would return into the womb of my will, as he came out of it when he was created. But in order to do this, I had to form, by means of my humanity, the root, the trunk, the branches, the leaves, the flowers, from which the celestial fruits of my will were to come out. No one can have the fruit without the tree. This tree was watered by my blood. It was cultivated by my pains, by my sighs and tears. The sun which shone upon it was the sun of my will alone. Therefore the fruits of my will certainly come. But in order to desire the fruits, one must know how precious they are, the good which they bring, the riches they produce. Here is the reason then for the many manifestations of my will, which I have made to you. In fact, knowledge will bring the desire to eat it. And once they have enjoyed what it means to live only to do my will, if not all, at least part of them, will return to the path of my volition. The two wills will exchange the perennial kiss. There will be no more dispute between the human will and that of the Creator. And after the many fruits it has given, my redemption will give also the fruit of the fiat voluntas tua on earth as it is in heaven. Therefore you be the first one to take this fruit, and want no other food, nor any other life, but my will alone. End of the reading.
All to Jesus I surrender, all to Him I freely give. I will ever love and trust Him, in His presence daily live. I surrender all. I surrender all to Thee, my blessed Savior. I surrender.
The 28th of January 1927, Volume 20. How our Lord will have three kingdoms. The kingdom of the supreme fiat will be the echo of the creation. How poverty and unhappiness will be banished. How in our Lord and in the Virgin there was voluntary poverty, not forced. How the divine will is jealous of taking care of its daughter. I was all abandoned in the supreme fiat, following its acts in the creation. My sweet Jesus came out from within my interior and told me, "My daughter, look at how beautiful is the order of the heavens. In the same way, when the kingdom of the divine will have its dominion on earth in the midst of creatures, also on earth there will be perfect and beautiful order. Then I will have three kingdoms, one in the celestial fatherland, another in the creation, and the third among the creatures. And each one will be the echo of the other, each one the reflection of the other. All created things will have their place of honour, and while they are all ordered and in harmony among themselves, one has no need of the other, because each one of them not only abounds, but overabounds in the goods with which God endowed it in creating it. In fact, having been created by a being who is happy and most wealthy, and whose riches never decrease by giving them, all created things carry the mark of happiness and the abundance of goods of their Creator. Just as all created things, so will all the children of the kingdom of the supreme fiat have their place of honour, of decorum, and of dominion. And while possessing the order of heaven and being in perfect harmony among themselves, more than celestial spheres, the abundance of good which each one will possess will be so great that one will never need the other. Each one will have within himself the source of the goods of his Creator and of his perennial happiness. Therefore, poverty, unhappiness, needs, and troubles will be banished from the children of my will. It would not be decorous for my will, so immensely rich and happy, to have children who would lack something and would not enjoy all the opulence of its goods, which rise continuously. What would you say if you saw the sun pour in light, barely sending a few glimmers to the earth? And if you saw a hem of heaven at one point, with just a few stars, and all the rest without the enchantment of the azure heavens? Would you not say, the one who created the sun does not possess the immensity of the light that rises, and therefore he has the earth lighted by just a few glimmers? It does not possess the power to extend to heaven everywhere, and therefore he has laid just a hem of it above our heads. So you would make yourself the idea that God is pouring light, that he does not have the power to extend everywhere the works of his creative hands. But instead, by seeing that the sun abounds so much with light, and that the heavens extend everywhere, you are convinced that God is rich and possesses the source of light. Therefore he has lost none of his light by endowing the sun with so much light, nor has his power decreased in extending the heavens everywhere. In the same way, if the children of my will not possess everything in abundance, one could say that my will is poor and does not have the power to make the children of its kingdom happy, which will never be. On the contrary, since it will be the image of the kingdom which my will has in creation, just as the heavens extend everywhere and abound with stars, and the sun abounds with light, the air with birds, the sea with fish, the earth with plants and flowers, in the same way, since the kingdom of the supreme fiat echoes the creation, the children of my kingdom will be happy and will possess everything in abundance. Therefore, each one will possess the fullness of goods and full happiness in the place in which the supreme will has placed him. Whatever the condition and the office they will occupy, all will be happy of their destiny. And since the kingdom of the supreme fiat will be the perfect echo of the kingdom which my will possesses in creation, one sun will be seen up high and another sun down in the midst of the creatures who will possess this kingdom. The echo of the heavens will be seen in these fortunate children, which they will populate with stars, with their acts. Even more, each one of them will be a heaven and a distinct sun, because wherever my will is present, it cannot be without heaven and without sun. Rather, as it takes possession of each of its children, it will form its heaven and its sun, because its nature is that wherever it has its stable possession, its sanctity, its unending light, it forms as though heaven and sun and multiplies them everywhere. But this is not yet all. The creation, echo of the celestial fatherland, contains music, the royal march, the spheres, the heavens, the sun, the sea, and all possess order and perfect harmony among themselves and go around continuously. This order, this harmony, and this going around without ever stopping forms such admirable symphony and music that it seems to be like the breath of the supreme fiat blowing into all created things like many musical instruments and forming the most beautiful of all melodies, such that if creatures could hear it, they would remain ecstatic. Now the kingdom of the supreme fiat will have the echo of the music of the celestial fatherland and the echo of the music of creation. The order, the harmony, and their continuous going around their creator will be so great that each one of their acts, words, and steps will be a distinct melody, like many different musical instruments, which will receive the breath of the divine will in such a way that everything they do will be as many distinct musical concerts which will form their joy and the continuous feast of the kingdom of the divine fiat. For your Jesus, there will no longer be difference between staying in the celestial fatherland and ascending to be in the midst of creatures in the kingdom of the supreme fiat upon earth. Then our work of creation will sing victory and full triumph, and we will have 3 kingdoms in one, symbol of the sacrosanct Trinity, because all of our works carry the mark of the one who created them. After this, I was thinking to myself, though the true children of the supreme fiat will be happy and will possess everything in abundance, yet my Queen Mama and Jesus himself, who was the very divine will, were poor on this low earth. They suffered the pains and the hardships of poverty. And my sweet Jesus added, my daughter, true poverty is when a creature is in need. She wants to take but has nothing to take and is forced to ask others for a bare means of living. This poverty is of necessity and almost forced. Instead, both in me and in the celestial Mama, who possessed all the fullness of the eternal fiat, it was not poverty of necessity and even less forced, but it was voluntary poverty, spontaneous poverty, squeezed by the press of divine love. Everything was ours. At one wish of ours, sumptuous palaces would have been raised, and banquets prepared with foods never before seen and tasted. And in fact, when it was needed, at little wish of ours, the very birds served us, bringing us fruits, fish, and other things in their beaks, making feast because they were serving their Creator and their Queen. With their trilling, singing, and warbling, they played the most beautiful melodies for us, so much so that in order not to attract the attention of the creatures with our uniqueness, we had to command them to depart, following their flight under the vault of heavens where our will was waiting for them, and obedient they would withdraw. Therefore, our poverty was of love. It was poverty of example, to teach the creatures detachment from the low things of the earth. It was not poverty of necessity, nor could it be so in an absolute way, because wherever the fullness, the life of my will reigns, all troubles end, as though under one single blow, and they lose life. Then, since the most Reverend Father de Francia heard that I had a fever, he let me know that if I were in need, I should take whatever I needed from the money he had left with me for one of his works. And my lovable Jesus, incoming, almost smiling, said to me, "My daughter, let Father know in my name that I thank him, and I will reward the goodness of his heart for the care he has for you. However, let him know that the daughter of my will has no need of anything, for my will abounds with everything. Even more, it is jealous that others may offer something, because it alone wants to give everything to its daughter. In fact, wherever my divine will reigns, there is no danger that natural means and abundance of goods may do harm. On the contrary, the more means she has and the more abundance she enjoys, the more she looks at the power, the goodness, the wealth of the supreme fiat in them. And she converts everything into most pure gold of divine will. So the more my will gives to her, the more it feels glorified in carrying out its life in the creature, in offering its own things to the one who lets it dominate and reign. It would be absurd if a very wealthy father had poor children. Such a father would deserve to be condemned. And then what would be the purpose of his riches? If the birth that came from his own body, his very children, conducted a life of hardships and miseries, would it not be a dishonour for this father and an unbearable bitterness for these children, knowing that while the father is extremely wealthy, they lack everything and can hardly satisfy their hunger? If this would be absurd and a dishonour for a father in the natural order, much more so in the supernatural order of the supreme fiat. It is more than Father, containing the fount of all goods, and therefore wherever it is present, happiness reigns, and it abounds with everything. More so, since with the soul who has possession of the divine will, it administers to the soul and to the body a sharp and penetrating sight, in such a way that she penetrates into the natural things, which hide it as a veil. And tearing these veils, in the natural things she finds the noble queen of the divine will reigning and dominating within her. So natural things disappear for her, and in all things she finds that adorable will which she possesses. She kisses it, she adores it, and everything becomes divine will for the soul. Therefore, each additional natural thing is a new act of divine will for her, which she possesses. So natural things are means for one who is child of my will, in order to make better known what my will does, can do, and possesses, and to what excessive point it loves the creature. Do you want to know then why creatures lack natural means, and many times these are snatched away from them, and they reduce themselves to the most squalid misery? First, because they do not possess the fullness of the supreme fiat. Second, because they confuse natural things and put nature in the place of God. Nor do they look at the supreme will in the natural things, but greedy, they become attached to them to form a vain glory for themselves, an esteem that blinds them, an idol for their hearts. Given this, it is necessary that natural means be lacking in order to put their souls in safety. But for one who is child of my will, all these dangers do not exist, and therefore I want them to possess everything in abundance and to lack nothing. End of the reading. The 28th of January 1934, volume 33. Fraternization between the Supreme Being and the creature on earth. Fraternization in the glory. Power over Jesus himself. How one who works in the divine will acquires the unitive, communicative, and diffusive strength. I was doing my round in the divine fiat, and my poor mind, now stopped at one point of its divine acts, now at another, in order to look at in some the beauty, in some the power, in some the interminability, and other things of the creative divine will. They seem to me all the supreme qualities exposed in all the created in order to love creatures, in order to make themselves known, to fraternize with creatures, and take them on as on their lap, and bring the creatures into the womb of the Creator from where everything had come forth, such that all the acts of the divine will are powerful helps, revealers to who lets himself be dominated by them, and they act as bearers of souls to the celestial fatherland. So I came to stop when the divine fiat made the solemn act of the creation of man. And my beloved Jesus, surprising me, told me, "My blessed daughter, stop together with us to look at with how much mastery, sumptuousness, nobility, power, and beauty man was created. All our divine qualities poured themselves over man. Each one of them wanted to display and pour itself more than dense rain over him whom they wanted to fraternize with them. All put themselves to work. Our light poured itself over him in order to form its brother of light. Goodness poured itself in order to form its brother or goodness. Love poured itself in order to fill him with love and form its brother all of love. Power, our wisdom, beauty, justice poured themselves over him in order to form their brother powerful, wise, just, and of an enchanting beauty. And our Supreme Being rejoiced in seeing our divine qualities all at work in order to fraternize with man, and that our will, taking life in man, maintained the order of our same divine qualities, so as to make him as embellished and as beautiful as they could. In fact, our occupation was man. Our gaze was fixed over him in order to let him imitate, copy, and fraternize with us. And this not only in creating him, but for the whole course of his life, our qualities offered themselves for the continuous labour of maintaining the fraternization with him whom they loved so much. And after having fraternized with him on earth, they prepared the great feast of fraternization of glory in the celestial fatherland. Fraternization of joy, of beatitude, of perennial happiness. Therefore I love him very much, because he was created by us. He is all ours. I love him because our divine being always flows over him, and it pours itself over him more than in an impetuous torrent, in order to leave of ours and gather new courses, so as to always give. Therefore, because he possesses of mine, so I love myself in him. I love him because he is destined to populate heaven, and being my brother of glory, we will glorify each other. I will be his glory as life, and he will be my glory as my work. This is why I love so much that he would do and live in my will, because with it my divine qualities find their place of honour, and they can maintain the fraternization with the creature. Without it, they cannot find the place, nor do they know where to put themselves. The fraternization remains broken, and my life remains suffocated. My daughter, what fatal change! When the creature withdraws from my will, I do not find my image or my life growing in him any more. My qualities are ashamed to fraternize with him, because the human volition, not being united to the divine, everything has been upset and becomes numbed. Therefore, you take to heart to not go out of my will. With it, you will fraternize with everything that is holy. You will be the sister of all our works, and you will have in your power your Jesus himself. After this, I continued my acts in the divine volition, and my sovereign Jesus added, my daughter, everything that one does in my will remains identified with it, acquires the unitive, communicative, and diffusive strength. And since our divine acts extend to everyone, there is no creature who is set aside. So one who works in our volition together with our act extends herself to everyone, wants to do good to everyone, and remains honoured and glorified to have been the universal bearer of good to everyone and everything. And I, my love, and yet one does not see in creatures the fruit of such a universal good. Ah, if everyone would receive it, how many transformations there would be in the low world. And Jesus repeated, this means that they do not receive it with love, and their hearts are a sterile earth because they do not have the generative seed. Therefore, our light cannot bring fecundity. It happens as to the sun, that even though it illuminates and warms all lands, yet if it does not find the seed in order to fecundate it, it cannot communicate its generative and productive virtue. And even though with its light and heat it has moulded those lands, they have not received one good. They remained what they were in their sterility. But with this, the sun has remained honoured and glorified because it has given its light to all. No one has been able to escape it, and it remains triumphant only because they possess the extendable virtue so as to be able to give themselves in a universal way to everyone and to do good to everyone. It is the greatest honour and the greatest glory for us. There is no greater honour, no greater glory than being able to say, I am the bearer of good to everyone. In my act, I take everyone in the palm of my hand. I embrace everyone, and I have the virtue of generating good over everyone. And since my ideal is the creature, so I call her into my will, so that together with it, she renders herself extendable to everyone and knows with how much love and how my will operates. End of the reading. There are no more readings today. Have a blessed day.